Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Hillyard, and I am here today with Rav Chahal as we continue our series in up close and personal interviews with your favorite astrologers. And today, our favorite astrologer is Michelle Dench. Welcome, Michelle.
I'm so happy to be your favorite astrologer today.
Ye- Absolutely. So, why don't we just dive in and talk about what drew you to astrology and along the way, how does it show in your chart?
Oh, great question. I think a Saturn return drew me to astrology. It's funny. I was probably just about in that time of the Saturn return, and I have a pretty strong and prominent Saturn in my chart, and Saturn squaring my nodes. And I remember during that time period, I was really depressed and I had a annual practice of like going to an astrologer or a tarot card reader for my birthday. But in that time, I started seeing an astrologer who was kind of, guiding me on how to get through the Saturn return. And shortly after that transit, I think maybe a couple years later. And so I started studying astrology with him, with this astrologer. And then I was having a Uranus transit, Uranus in my ninth house. Um, and I just became obsessed with astrology during that time. Like I could not, and I worked full time as a financial advisor. I had a very solid career working as an investment advisor, certified financial planner, but like every free moment that I had, I was listening to a podcast on astrology. I was going to an astrology retreat. I was going to a conference. I was just obsessed. And um, by the end of that Uranus transit, when Uranus was entering my 10th house, I left my work as a full-time financial advisor. Um, I ended up only seeing financial planning clients if they would let me look at their natal chart. And then progressively over a couple of years, getting to a point of like, no, I'm not doing any more financial planning. I'm just going to be an astrologer. This is all I'm going to do. And I gave myself fully to, I thought, oh, if I keep doing finance stuff for other people, then I'm, never gonna really develop myself as an astrologer. So I sort of gave up all of that life. And there were different experiences that happened as a part of that where it was sort of like I was giving it up and the universe was also taking it away. So, it worked its way out to where I ended up becoming a full-time astrologer. Um, and partnering with another astrologer, and now I do finances for an astrology organization.
Can't escape those
I
finances.
really can't. I'm still doing taxes for other people. It's just for organizations that I created devoted to astrology.
Michelle, is
Yeah.
that your Venus retrograde in Capricorn?
it
Capricorn, Venus being money, Capricorn being institutions.
yeah, and I have a Taurus midheaven, so it's like, I know
Money,
how to
money, money, money,
treat things with money and
money and
responsibility.
responsibility.
I create a lot of money and responsibilities. That's great. Some
Uh,
of them are
Yeah.
living responsibilities and others are organizational responsibilities. Yeah.
I love it. And so,
So
so
I was gonna ask you spoke about the Saturn return, and I think that's common for a lot of people in terms of, Saturn does make you do the work. You have to do the deep soul work. It's going to be a conscious decision as well because you can just float through it if you want to. Um, I'm realizing that your Uranus opposition is going to be coming up, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Do you, because Uranus is going through your 10th house and stuff. what do you kind of, is anything coming up right now for you in terms of that opposition to the fourth and 10th house? In terms of the internal world, I'm talking about as much as the external world.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
a lot of the off-camera things that I spoke about, I think one of the biggest internal dichotomies, which is kind of what brought me to astrology and what feels like it's, pulling me away from it in some ways,
Mm,
um, have to do with my spiritual path and my family life. The deeper I go in devotion to my spiritual path, right? It was my desire to really know myself and to understand God that brought me so much into evolutionary astrology. It was like the first time I really heard people talking about the soul and talking about, this desire to return to source, which has led me down a total rabbit hole in many ways, and mirrors a lot of, so like my family upbringing. So my mother is a high priestess in the Order of Mary Magdalene, and in the Isis temple. She's always been a spiritual person. When I was a little girl, she would take me to ashrams, and she would take me to, I would meet gurus. I remember getting blessings from this guru, and then later finding out in my 30s that it was like a world famous, person that, and I was just like so delighted to get a teddy bear from, I had no idea. And then my father became a born again Christian when I was about 3 years old, when my parents were going through a divorce and separation. And it was an incredibly traumatic time in my life. And my dad had like Jesus come to him in a vision and really became a part of the church. Um, and so my parents have been these polar opposites my entire life. And they've manifested as extremes of these archetypes, And I've always been the one sort of walking the middle path, like very having a deep relationship to Jesus and to prayer. But like many years I spent working for a meditation center, studying Buddhism, practicing with these monastic nuns that I from the UK actually. And then in the last couple of years, really, my devotion to Mary Magdalene has come through very strongly. And she, in fact, probably a decade ago, came to me in a dream and said, if you want to heal with your mother, you need to be healed by your mother. And I was like, oh man, I do not want to go to one of my mom's like priestess gatherings. Like, oh God, so embarrassing. But she was so clear in the dream that I went and I did, it's like now I feel more and more those those worlds are so divergent for me. Like my father's world, my father became a pastor in the last couple of years. All my life he should have been a preacher. Like I should have been a preacher's daughter, and now he is. So it makes sense. And my mother is, really actualizing and bringing forward her work with Mary Magdalene. But I'm still like not reconciled in either of those pathways.
Well, I find it interesting that your Gemini moon is opposite Uranus in Sagittarius. And
Mhm.
here we have, Uranus, Rob talked about your Uranus opposition coming, your 10th house moon and your fourth house Uranus, and that dichotomy of your parents and their life path, but they meet in the middle in you.
mm,
It's true. And what's interesting to me, my life now, I spend a good amount of my time going to an evangelical church that I absolutely love. Like I love worship and church and song. I love how welcoming they are of my family. Like I'm not the only woman there with four children. There are, you know, there is so much that about the church that is nourishing for me. And I also spend a lot of time going to my painting community, which is very much, LGBTQ inclusive. It is a very like diverse, and my priestess friends are there. Some of them are Jewish. I also go to a synagogue, so there's this diversity in my life. And I've recently had just a lot of grief, I think, in that those two parts of my life are not, they don't cross over, right? But on Easter Sunday, my mom came to church with me, and it was a profound experience because the preacher was preaching about um, something that my mother had literally been preaching about in her Mary Magdalene class. And I felt like my mom is okay here. Like I was a little worried that she was going to be freaked out or feel uncomfortable. But then when I stood up to sing with the worship songs, like my mom stood up with me. It was one of the strangest. So I feel like there's parts of that um oppositional energy that is reconciling through me. And I'm coming more to terms with not separating myself inside of those polarities, right?
Mm.
I feel like the union of all polarity exists on Earth. That then where we feel that oppositional energy, Jeffrey Wolf Green calls the opposition the bridge to evolution. We cannot cross the bridge until we are taking it from our personal single, into the social, into the larger collective. We live in a hugely polarized world right now where the 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 factions of the world are at odds in such, you know, it's like creating so much suffering.
Everywhere.
Yeah, and it creates a lot of suffering in my own life. There are parts of me that feel like I'm not totally at home in the church. There are, elements of my beliefs and what I feel around scripture that I feel contradict a lot of the Orthodox values or the evangelical values. And I'm fortunate to have a pastor there who is just like, yeah, bring your questions, bring your doubts. Keep coming back. You're still welcome here. We love you. When I'm like bracing myself for like, when are you going to reject me? Like, when are you going to burn me at the stake? Like, and it's so far it hasn't happened, but um,
And do they know that you do
Michelle,
astrology?
they
yeah.
they know that I do astrology.
Cool.
Um, you know, I I had one experience where, of course, my painting teacher offered to host my baby shower at her art studio, and I invited the pastor's wife, and she was like, I'm married to Jesus, and unfortunately, they worship the divine feminine there. I cannot come. And I was like, oh, okay, that brings up a lot of grief for me. Like this is one of the ways where my parents were never able to meet each other.
Mm.
Um, maybe they will never in this lifetime, it brings up that wound, that sense
Sure.
of alienation that is very a part of my Aquarius nature. Like wherever I go, I'm a little bit weird. I'm a little bit don't belong. I feel a little bit awkward. I've come to
Yeah.
accept it as part of my inherent reality, you know.
Michelle, can I say something?
Yeah.
Because your nodes are in the sixth and 12th house, right? And
Mhm.
in Cancer Capricorn. So it's the masculine and the feminine. And you've got skip steps. So there's stuff you're resolving in this lifetime to do with that energetic polarity. And everything around you is a reflection of that. So even that conversation by the pastor's wife, that's her reality.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be, it's not your reality. but somewhere there's a projection of a mirror, something happening where maybe somewhere within there's still that little bit of maybe I need to be more, I'm going to use this word, correct, right? Like what is correct? Your moon in Gemini tells me that you're here for variety. There is a diversity of ways to source. There's not just one way, there's many ways. And ultimately it's that all those different rivers linking into the ocean. And that's essentially, I feel, where your awareness is kicking in. You've been telling us before about, walking down this path to do with Mary Magdalene, and she's very prominent in your birth chart as an asteroid. Conjunct your Neptune in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is universe. I look at it as natural law, it's truth, which is natural to humanity. And I feel that's where you're stepping into. And maybe those times when there's sort of those little nudges and like, why is this person saying this? Is more of something that you've embodied in the past that you just need to release now in
Mhm.
order to clear your way forward.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that. Um, I I oscillate in that way of the skip step between feeling as though, well, am I going to have to release like, my let go of my painting group and all in order to fully be, release astrology in order to fully be loved and accepted over here. Because for a long time, my dad has not really wanted to speak to me or have a relationship with me because of my occupation. And
Mhm.
that was a big challenge. But what it did, my skip step is in the third house in Libra, and it led me to this conversation, this dialogue where my dad sent me a bunch of scriptures that say, like, if you see an astrologer, you should stone them, make sure you
Mm,
don't, blah, blah, blah. And I I entered into this dialogue with him about it. And it resolved a lot of the things from my childhood. Like the dialogue itself, the argument, which seemed to be philosophical and theological, ended up getting to root things in my childhood. Resentments that my father still carries towards my mother, anger and, hurt and it got to some of the very core abandonment pieces that I've been working on, which continue to manifest themselves in my life. And I think you're right, Rob, that we come here to resolve these things. Like
mm,
they're not here doing something to us, just like I don't
mm,
believe the planets do things to us.
mm.
I think that the astrology is reflective, not directive. And it
Yes.
reflects dynamics that we are working out in our lifetime.
Mm,
And so, of course, like this pastor's wife, she's reflecting something. What I see in the church and what I love and appreciate about almost all of them, really, they are devoted and
yeah.
they walk with such faith and humility, and there's such love, and there are marriages there, and people are working like on really walking a path, which often the church has turned me off in earlier parts of
Mm,
my life because of so much hypocrisy, right? They would say one thing and do another thing. And yet I see more of that hypocrisy in the spiritual world where it's like
mm,
people are saying all these spiritual things and then not willing to commit themselves to the actual work that is
mm,
required to you, so it's like both aspects of my life, and I'm not willing to let go of painting. I'm not willing to give up on the irreconcilable differences of my life. I'm actually trying to integrate them into who
good.
I am as a whole being, because I see that that is the answer, right? That standing in my own truth and really being able to see, oh, okay, the, these things are reflecting true parts of my soul that I can't live without either of them. In the same way,
Yeah.
you know, a child can't be created without a mother and a father, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's
and
beautiful.
to Rob's point, your Gemini moon rules your north node,
Mm-mm.
and then Uranus rules your sun, right? And Mercury. So I mean, you've got that opposition, pl- give and take, and like you said, resolving on Earth. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that terminology.
So true.
Mm.
And I'm moving towards like Pluto is trining my moon right now. It's going to come back for um the second trine during the retrograde. But I think the third pass ends up being when you're by the time Uranus is exactly on my moon. It's
Right.
like you
Wow.
can't make this stuff up.
I
No,
was just
you
about to
can't.
say that.
Well, and then
No.
and that'll figure into your Uranus, and there let's see, what is it? It's also the Uranus and Pluto, Uranus transiting Uranus and Pluto will be trine um Jupiter in Cancer
Oh yeah, on
will
my North Node. Yeah.
right will be
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it's a very heavy period of time for you. It's
I
very
might even be able to spontaneously, incarnate another soul. That's how we're done with it. Oh man.
It is
love it all.
beautiful. Yeah. Michelle, we spoke earlier about, astrology. Where can you see astrology in your birth chart? Yeah, of course, Uranus, we link it to astrology. But you've got your fourth house, you've got Jupiter in Scorpio. And I always look at that also meaning like knowledge, metaphysical knowledge, deep knowledge coming through in the fourth house, linking to the emotional body. So, in terms of intuition and stuff, I'm just curious now. Do you get kind of does the body do anything in terms of like those feelings and little information that comes through?
I mean, I think of it more as uh it's funny. When I receive messages, I am hearing it internally, like from
Okay.
um sometimes I'll see visions or I'll have images come through. And more astrology has given me a template for allowing the information to come through. But it's an inner auditory experience for me.
Well, your 12th house Cancer, the ruler being your moon in Gemini, so of course, it's
Well,
going to be
and
yeah,
and
dream world as well.
and
Yeah,
that Jupiter is square your um Mercury retrograde.
I know.
And
Oh
so,
yes,
so you've got that the different facets of
information.
hearing, yeah,
Yeah.
intuition and knowledge, and
Even writing, Michelle, even what do you call it? Automatic writing. I don't know if you do that.
I don't often have time to do automatic
Mm.
writing, but it's interesting. I started my YouTube channel a couple years ago and I would do the weekly weather. So I would, do the week
Mm.
ahead and I looked at it. It was a Saturn transit that I was having and I was made a commitment to do once a week and just to sit down and kind of channel everything that I saw in the chart. And instead of, because I had been listening to a lot of other astrologers and their weekly, reports, I just stopped doing that entirely. I stopped listening to other people's forecasts.
Mm.
I just started practicing sitting down in front of the chart and channeling what I saw. And a lot of things woke up for me, like my ability to see trauma in the chart and to be able to reflect energetics in the chart, to
Mhm.
understand archetypal dynamics because I was following the moon every single week. Tracking the lunar cycles and the phases became alive for me. And the
Mm.
asteroid goddesses, I started to be able to really interpret the energetics of them just from doing this weekly practice. And more recently, I've been feeling the calling to just do messages and not to
Okay.
rely on the natal chart in front of me to, because
Oh, I
normally
see.
when I'm talking about the week, I'm letting what comes through, but I'm using the chart that I'm seeing of the present moment as I'm going through the week. And I'll see, like, I'll notice the moon in Libra and I'll be like, all of a sudden wanting to talk about relationships. And I just follow my mind from one thing to the next thing. So it's very Gemini moonish. I know sometimes I lose my track, my train of thought, my train runs, and I have to get back on it. And I
I hear
bless
you,
the heart
sister.
of every single person who like tolerates. Sometimes I know it's getting good when like I'll trip on an emotional wire where something starts to make me cry, and I just have learned to trust it, like to trust the messages, not to edit myself, not to, sometimes I'm afraid, like, oh man, did I go too far? Did I say too much? Was I too honest there? And I just keep leaning into trusting what's coming through. And now I'm feeling more and more called, like, let go of the chart and just, you know, focus on the messages that you received. So, like, I received two messages this morning while I was in my cycling class that were pretty profound, and they just came out of nowhere. The first one was, when there is fear, we will seek answers. When there is peace, we remain still. I was like, oh
Wow.
man. Then I have to live into any message that I give, anything I share, for me has to be applied knowledge, meaning I'm living it. If I'm not
Mm.
walking it, I don't want to talk about it. If it's not real inside of me, I'm not going to reflect it in the natal chart, because feel like a lot of times with astrology, especially, we learn a language, we learn these things, these archetypes from somebody else, someone else's, most of them men, and no offense to the old men who taught us all astrology, but there's a lot of them and they said a lot. But like there is forgotten knowledge, there is inherent knowledge, there is intuitive knowledge, which is valuable. And if we focus too much on what we learn from other astrologers and not what we
Yeah.
already know inside of ourselves, so most of my practice is just, am I already living this? Is this true for me? Am I living into it because I'm trying to learn something? And then I will share it. And so that's one thing I'm like, oh man, I'm always trying to find out what's the answer, what's the solution to this. That's so true. That message came through.
Mm.
Um, and then the second message I got this morning was, the miraculous is a sudden and unexpected return to our true nature as love. And I was like, oh, okay. So that what that means, anytime you're like, oh, that was a miracle, right? Whether it's almost always something we didn't expect, where love came in and returned something to the way it was before, right? If you have a miraculous healing, your body is healed. You have a miraculous change in a relationship or a state in your life, right?
Mm.
That is a return of yourself to that love, to that true nature that you were already. You were already that. We just had either forgotten, or the illness or something, whatever was happening, the environmental factors obscured our being able to recognize something that was already true about us. And I'm like, okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
trying to give myself more permission to just like receive the messages and then live into them as best I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful way. That's exactly how we all need to be. For our gut instinct, we are our own authority. And that whole thing that we get taught from like religion and stuff is, I say religion, I mean like, consensus religion is everything is outside. Actually not. It's not. Everything is within. We are the divine temple. So us listening, we're listening to our inner Godhead is that communion with source. So you're kind of just coming back into that, I feel. That skip step like we spoke about, surely in past lifetimes you've deviated away from it, whether it was family, society, this isn't the right thing to do. You're just coming back onto yourself now in that relationship you're having is with yourself. Your Venus retrograde in Capricorn. And we were talking about this before. It's very much about coming back to having self-responsibility, that the relationship you have to the most important person in your life is first and foremost your own soul, yourself. And once that relationship is, I'm going to say healed, but once that relationship within is more secure, feels secure, everything around you just shifts, right? Everything around you will shift.
Yeah, the word that I heard inside was solidified. Once that
Okay.
relationship solidified.
The one I
Yeah.
heard was resolved.
It's funny. It's great. I love it. This is my Gemini moon too.
Yeah.
Over here.
Mine too.
That's my Capricorn. My Capricorn moon is right on your Venus, so maybe that's where, my
It's
insight's coming in.
great. Yeah, and it's like, and the truth is, like, I don't want to be alone. I deeply desire, committed relationship and partnership. And I've been going back and forth around this thing of like, why is it that when we're in relationship, we seem to lose ourselves or lose our connection to God, and when we're thrown out of relationship or have circumstances where we're thrown back upon ourselves, only then do we become focused on our own self-love. How do we evolve to a point at which that we are in relationship to others and holding that central relationship to self and to God simultaneously, that they are not mutually exclusive? Because
Yeah.
I see a lot of people, run from relationship because they don't want to lose themselves. And they feel like, oh, only in isolation, only by myself can I be with God. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to live that way. And I get it that my silence, I wake up every morning with a child who I ask God to wake me up when they they want to be with me, but also my little infant wakes up at that same time. And so it's like even when I'm meditating and even when I'm in prayer, I'm not alone. I'm with this infant. And you know, I got it's like it's hard to find time to yourself.
Well, and maybe that's your messenger of God.
Yeah, and he is often. Oh my God, I look at his face and it's so beautiful. It's so, and he has a little Venus in Capricorn too. So I'm like, he's my little love bug, you know. So
Oh,
yeah.
That's great.
I'm just looking at your chart. I've got it at the side of me just to see what else jumps out. Um, you're talking about your mom being linked to the Mary Magdalene and Isis. Your natal Isis is conjunct Uranus. Did you know that?
Well,
Yeah, um it's in a new phase. So it's interesting. You've got that new phase. You've got a new phase of um well, right now in terms of progression, you've got a new phase of Magdalene and your moon in Capricorn. You talk about self-responsibility and becoming the master, actually, Michelle. So it's a time where it's a time for mastery, and you're right. That whole divine relationship is divine relationship. You've got to see it physically, and the only way to see it physically, especially in a deep committed relationship, is with another person. And I totally agree with you when, we can't, we're not meant to be on our own to learn the divine relationship because you can only see it through mirrored through another person. And um and honestly, Michelle, I do feel it will come. It will come. You can see the work you're doing. And yeah, it's just that one foot in front of the other. I know Jeffrey says it, the value is in the effort, right? But it is. It is. You're doing the work.
yeah, thanks.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you cry.
It happens all the time.
But actually, though, that's the emotions releasing, right? My Capricorn moon will be like, we can hold these emotions. I don't need to let this out. Clearly, I do. You need to be vulnerable to allow life to flow through as well.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you say that Isis had progressed to Juno as well?
Oh, did I let me have a quick look.
So
Did
funny.
I say that?
I know my
I'm
progressed moon
sh
is in the fourth house. Is it already in Capricorn?
Your progressed moon? Yes.
Okay.
Actually, Juno is at 5 degrees. So yeah, you got Magdalene, the moon, and Juno
Oh my
all
God.
conjunct. So yeah.
Well, yeah, but natally, Juno is 24 degrees Sagittarius.
Yes. Which
Yeah,
initially is actually, yeah, you're right, conjunct Magdalene.
yeah,
So
yeah,
look at that, Michelle. That committed relationship to the divine feminine,
Mhm.
and which eventually will be mirrored back.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. And yeah, your moon is progressed moon is well had gone over Neptune as well.
Oh yeah. The
Yes.
day my progressed moon entered Sagittarius, was the day that I got a positive pregnancy test for Isaac, and then he was born. On the Sagittarius new moon. I've had Neptune sitting on my progressed sun forever. Talk about having clarity and being in a spiritual state of surrender.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Neptune
Oh,
square
actually,
is,
yes, yes, you're right.
that's, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Any of the transits I've been through, you know.
Michelle, but your soul kind of went, yes, I'll take this lesson in this lifetime. Yeah, but yep, this is perfect for me.
I'm good at signing up for shit that I don't. But I realize afterwards, like, whoa, did I say yes to that? Being
Well, that's a lot of work.
that is a lot of work. Oh man, that's funny. Oh,
Oh
You have
yeah,
to
yeah. So
laugh.
I had your progressions last September, and so now putting it. So at that point, uh, your progressed moon was almost conjunct your progressed Neptune, and now it's moved to
okay.
progressed Juno, that's great.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Whew.
Yeah,
Hopefully by the end of this,
Yeah.
I'll be married.
yeah.
We'll see.
Well, Michelle, we're going to probably just move on because I know you've got stuff to get to as well. So we're just going to move away from astrology a little bit. I'm a big bookworm, and I'm always recommending books to everybody. Just wanted to know if there's any key books that you've read in your life, apart from astrology books, that's been impactful and that you could share with the audience.
Um, well, I mean, the go-to book for me, astrology wise, is Pluto too. This is like my bedside reader. It's kind of the only thing I reference. If I'm teaching, I reference this again and again and again. Um, let's see. Personally impactful books. Well, as a Gemini moon, I happened to order a book yesterday. I haven't read this, so I can't say from direct, but somebody recommended to me Forgiving What You Cannot Forget.
Okay.
And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at on my spiritual journey. So I'm going for it. Uh, let's see what else. I spent a big portion of my life studying A Course in Miracles, which I
Right.
don't necessarily practice or read or reflect on anymore, but that book had a huge impact. I think it was really one of the catalysts for my own journey of awakening. I was going through a dark night of the soul at the time that book came into my life for a second time. The first time it came into my life was when I was younger, and my mom has been a student of Course in Miracles for many years, and I opened it up and I was like, what is this? This is garbage, Then the second time it came into my life, I opened it up and I was like, oh my God, this is the best. Like, this is profound. It's like things can meet us often when we're not ready for them, and then they'll meet us again when we're ready for them. So yeah, it's totally great. To just, I'm open-minded and I'm always having probably like 4 or 5 books. Um,
Yeah.
so my library right now, if you want to, how to be an adult in relationships, love, closer to love, and undefended love.
And you were doing, weren't you doing a Venus um, workshop?
Right now I'm teaching a class series on the Pluto 2 composite.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Which is,
it's called You plus Me equals we. And so I'm teaching on the differences between the composite Plutos in polarity. So we're
Mm,
doing first house, seventh house, and so on. And then we're looking at synastry and composite charts in relationships. It's a really sweet, like small group. And I love teaching that way because I can teach Jeffrey Wolf Green's material, but then bring it in the way that I teach by using people's charts. I don't like to use celebrity charts. I feel like the only way we are learning is through direct experience in our own relationships. So I create a small group container and we're like looking at actual relationships where people, where I can reflect the nature of the soul dynamics and people have direct experience with those souls. And so it's been fun. That's my next thing that I teach on Fridays on Venus's day always. And
mm.
yeah, and right now this is my last class series that I'm intending to teach for this year.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, and my thought was, in reference to what you were saying, is that we cut and the importance of using, direct examples. We all come to astrology to learn more about ourselves,
Yeah.
Mm.
and so, using appropriate or you know uh, chart examples that pertain, to the people that are learning it are more, I think, are more impactful than celebrity charts or,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times, sometimes we have to use them, but I've often,
Mhm.
how can you really know who
Right.
Mm.
person was, or right? We can reflect sometimes the larger archetypal dynamics that are very well seen.
Sure, the outward
Yeah, I've used
manifestation.
the royal family to illustrate family dynamics because it's profound. Like the Cancer,
Yeah.
Capricorn, Scorpio synastry of all of them, you know.
Yeah.
But I can only know what like Wikipedia says about them or what is written in a memoir, to the extent that
Yeah.
it's actually. But when I'm working with my students, I I feel like my purpose is to be there to serve their souls and the relationships that they are trying to evolve through and their own soul dynamics. So why would I teach them about other people's dynamics? Why wouldn't I just work with them on what's alive and true and real for them? So,
So do you get your students to give you their charts and you work through that? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I know we're doing a series, through, sexuality in Venus through the signs. And I'm doing the Cancer Capricorn. And if I'm honest, I do know people with those archetypes, but are they willing for me to use that chart? Because sexuality gets so deep,
Mm.
it's a flat no. So
You could ask
unfortunately I'll be,
You
yeah.
could ask them. I would say this. I did not advocate I mean, I normally would be an advocate for using chart examples, especially in the association. The reason why
Mm,
I did the mentoring was because you need
yeah,
a private container for that.
100%. Yeah,
And we opted not to do the mentoring with this topic because
yes,
it's such a taboo topic and it's such a sensitive area for people that,
yeah,
to go there safely to talk about sexuality means we're talking about rape, abuse, all the shadow sides. We're
yeah,
talking about, things like that. I want to, in my classes, I have a safe and sacred container where people know that they're loved, they know that they're safe. In a
yeah,
larger community like that, people may not be getting the kind of trauma informed holding that they need.
Yeah.
In this
Yes.
last series for the association, we opted not to use personal chart examples, although Jordan did an amazing job. She used client consented examples
Yeah,
of
she
people,
did.
and that's really what I want to see people doing as much as possible,
Mm,
because with those, you can be anonymous and we can talk about the dynamics, and you don't have to tiptoe around it, like I recently did a talk on fertility and childbirth for NCGR, and I used consented examples of friends who had in vitro fertilization, because it's like
nice.
I know their stories and I know their journey
Mm,
with these children, and I could exemplify certain things that I would not be able to do with, and I could get dates of the inseminations and things like that that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
yeah.
It
No,
does,
that's deep.
it's
Yeah.
it's worthy to see if you can find some client examples
Yeah.
who are willing to show themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, but I know that because I'm planning the workshop and the class lecture, and I've picked up some examples that people will know of, but to
Mm.
give them a kind of this is what the dynamics can be, because you're right, in terms of real life experience, it's gonna go so deep and it can hit wounding. If somebody can feel wounded, like, and I've worked with clients who haven't asked me a question to do with, let's say, sexuality and stuff, but you can see it. So I work with the question the client asks. That's all I can work with, right? And but potentially I can see stuff. And there are a couple of charts I do have, but I'm not going to go down that route because the individuals haven't asked me that question yet. I do know it's coming because you can kind of just see some stuff. But for now, I totally agree with you. Real life examples are more raw. And it's kind of like a validation. Oh, I'm not the only person going through this.
Mm.
That this is real. That what I'm feeling is real. It's validated. And that's the biggest thing with evolutionary astrology, right? That validation that you get, that it's something that's been experienced for soul growth,
Mhm.
um, which is essentially what we're here for, right? Yeah. But no, your books are interesting. Do you ever read fiction?
I wish I could. I haven't been able to get into very many fiction books. I'm a Gemini moon with a third house Pluto. I want real. Don't make it up. I'm already living shit that people would not believe that, it's like, I have a really hard time reading fiction.
Well, the smallest book, it's tiny, it's quick, in The Alchemist by Paolo Coelho.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
you'd like it. I think you'd like it. Yeah.
Probably
My
have that.
recommendation.
I also have, admittedly, hundreds of books that I have never read.
I
I
I
think that's a,
resonate with you. I
I
have a
was going to
10th
say,
house
I think
Gemini.
that's a Gemini moon thing, but maybe
Yeah.
not.
I yeah. I work in a bookshop part-time, you know that. So books are like literally my life and things, and I have to admit it's a blessing because I can devour books. But I know that there's a time where this knowledge needs to come out. It can't just be contained within me. So yeah, that's my challenge.
Absolutely. Okay, so my favorite question to wrap up is, what do you do in your spare time?
Oh, spare time is an illusion. What I'm loving right now, my days are like, I get up really early, um, pray, meditate, make food, do laundry, tidy my house before, all usually before 8 o'clock. And then I've been going to the gym, and I'm like, thank God the sun's in Taurus right now. Like I'm into the cycle fit class. I'm into the hot tub. I'm into the steam room. I pray in the steam room. You know, as much as I can to tending my physical body as as I possibly can. Um, for fun, I like to sing. I like to paint. I'm once a month, I'm in a painting class. So I'm making progress on a pretty large painting. Um, that's kind of like my free time, you know.
Michelle, that painting behind you, is that
Mhm.
yours?
Yeah, it's my rendition of the Black
Beautiful.
Dog, but she's pregnant. So,
Your rendition of what was that?
of the Black Madonna.
Oh, oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
I did this in a Black Madonna class. Um, but she's pregnant and I have a kind of a signature that is often in my paintings of a little outline of a pregnant woman. Someone called my paintings the other day like love graffiti style because sometimes you'll see like Venus or the moon but it's very abstract, you can't really. What I love about painting is that you cannot control the process.
Right.
So the chaos of the movement of paint when and things creating themselves that I didn't intend to create. I I practice intentional creativity, but it's profound to me when things get created unintentionally. I love that more than anything. And
Mm.
so that's what I do in my
Well, interestingly, the asteroid Chaos is in your ninth house in Taurus. So it guides your process.
Well, my house is chaos, my fourth house. I cannot get, ditches never end, laundry never ends.
Yeah.
Uh, I have a little Mars and Taurus toddler who loves destroying my house. So
So yeah,
Beautiful.
so part of your spare time is being a mom.
it's
Yeah.
more and more my full time, I'm
Yeah.
I'm going to take a summer sabbatical and just be with my children as much as I possibly can. And one of the things I'm wanting to experiment with is like I've had ideas. I'm a Gemini moon filled with ideas of doing just creative camps for kids and so I'm going to try out doing some things that hopefully bring more tourist slowness and creativity and fun. And part of it was inspired by this question that someone asked me yesterday of like, which I've been asking myself. This woman reflected it to me like, what would it take to become a joyful mom? You know, and I'm like, well, I'd have to really be nurturing my joy in all these different ways. And so I'm gonna take the summer and kind of lean into that question and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Beautiful.
sounds lovely. Well,
Yeah.
this has been fun. Hopefully you can't hear my answering machine
Yeah.
in the background. I forgot to unplug my phone, but this has been so much fun, Michelle. I always enjoy talking to you. We had a lot of fun with our chit chat with Gemini moons, and after we started recording them, then they became videos. But it started with just it's just fun to talk to you. There's always your the way you express yourself and the things that come through you are always inspiring. So thank you for sharing with us today. It's been
Yeah.
a pleasure.
Thank you, Sue. I love
Yeah.
being with you. And Rob, I always love our conversations. So I appreciate getting to be together with both of you and having this special time.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you,
absolutely.
Michelle.
See you next time.